Hi, I'm Mark. I'm a personal trainer, and I'm going to go over a couple of exercises in part as I've done before, not necessarily by the request of my clients, but given some of the needs of my clients, I'm going to be touching on some more hip exercises, trying to address not just where the hip is, for instance, but where the buttocks or the gluteus maximus muscles would be in this general area. So we're going to be looking at things like extending the hip, and also the option to bend the knee to work on muscles that kind of drive closer to the sacrum here. And I apologize, some of the technical terms aren't that clear, but you'll get a general idea of this area here in the gluteus maximus, and some of the muscles that extend to help around the hip area and in the back of it in particular. So I'm going to start doing a demonstration on the table. So my assistant will watch as I go over to the table
I like the term cameraman. Ow, my phone. Yep, it's me for camera, Jackie.
So what I'm going to do is, I think I'll go this side to make it easier.
Oh, you're so old.
So we're going to look at an exercise to work the buttocks as we go. I don't have to go too zooming in, but the first one's going to start on the stomach, and we're trying to get this area generally, the butt
strong,
and some of the hamstrings as well.
You can just say strong.
So one of the things that you can do to start is lightly tensing up the glute muscle before you actually lift it. And if that's not helping too much, you can press the opposite side. So in this case, my right thigh pressing down to the table. And so I can tense up the buttocks as I raise the thigh off the table, if possible. And then as I'm lowering it, not to go too fast, but carefully down. And then resume another repetition, doing the same idea, trying to raise the thigh off the table. Now, for some people, it'll be a little bit more difficult. So you don't have to physically lift the leg off the table. You might just want to take the air out of the thigh off the table, so you're not going too high. In fact, you may barely even lift the thigh off the table. And with each repetition, I have some clients that, depending on the position of where they need it the most, they may want to start from neutral, which would be with the leg and the knee bent straight up like this. And with each repetition, maybe turning one way or the other. In this case, I'm going to suggest for a few people that I'm working with lately is to slightly turn the leg, the lower leg below the knee, slightly inward. And as I raise that thigh off the table, the challenge is trying to maintain the tension in the buttocks and the back of the thigh, and then slowly lower that leg down to the table. So the difficulty for most people is stamina. And so with each repetition, you can begin to rotate that leg a little bit more. So what you should notice is it's even more challenging to raise the thigh off the table now, because some tissues around the gluteus maximus may not be able to work quite as well, and focus on the leg, thank you. Make sure the legs are the ones doing it. And if that becomes more of a challenge, you're only going so far in with the leg as you can generate some tension, which is really the glute muscles trying to help the thigh raising off the table. And you can do one of two things. You can physically, if I do with the other leg, for instance, I can hold for a count of 6 seconds, for instance, or up to 6 seconds, just to kind of work on generating tension. But if I actually lift the leg off the table, I may only be able to go for a couple seconds and then slowly lower the leg down towards to support it. And then hopefully with each repetition, maybe I can rotate the lower part of the leg a little bit, and then either I'm holding or tensing up my glute muscles for about 6 seconds, and then relax and then repeat. Or if I'm going to physically raise the thigh off the table, I have to make sure the glute muscles are still tensed a bit, and not for 6 seconds, maybe just for a second or two, and then slowly lower the leg down, still imagining you're trying to raise that thigh off the table. So that's one of the, sorry about that, one of the two exercises there. Didn't realize how that was a close-up. The second one, I'll use the wall.
The second one better be short.
It will be. So the second one is is a complement, in a sense, to the one that we just did, especially if someone has difficulties trying to raise the thigh off the table. So what I'm focusing on is trying to bring, I'll just kind of use the skeleton for example, I'm trying to bend the leg something like this and hopefully generate some contraction towards where the pelvis and the sacrum are. So I'll get my assistant here, camera operator, to focus. So I'm not going to sit down, I'm going to hold this for support. And you can see where my leg is here, pressed in this regard. I'm not really bringing my leg quite as far back as I did on the skeleton. So I'm gently pressing my foot. Yeah, old does that too. Gently pressing the leg into the wall. Again, maybe holding it for a few seconds and tensing up some of these muscles in the glutes. And then with each repetition, what I'm going to try and do is see if I can bring my leg back more behind me. And as you notice, I kind of turned my body. I started somewhere here. Maybe it was a little easier to start in this position. And then after that repetition, I might turn and rotate away from the wall and still focus on pressing back in to the point where I'm going to hopefully, almost like I'm pressing behind my back. So I'm kind of pressing in against the wall, and depending on the person, and if I wanted to do something like this, I could press my foot into this if I was really good. But the wall might be helpful because it protects me from maybe bringing the leg back too much. And quickly just going back to the skeleton here. So if at first you have to start barely pushing in, so you're not, the angle is a little bit more user-friendly for the glute muscles and some of the hamstring, which will be working a little bit because I have to support it. But with each repetition, I'm trying to see if I can rotate and turn this hip in this direction. So what's happening is these tissues are shortening, as you notice, as I rotate this part here towards where the thumb is. If I can rotate that in, those muscles are shortening to help work on that aspect. So ideally, if it can be done on the floor or on the table like we just did, that's great. But nothing's wrong if you're having to stand next to a wall or use a table, or I should say a chair, to assist you in that. That might make a difference in the quality of the contraction of the muscles in and around the hip, and especially in the buttocks on the opposite side, the glute muscles. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you can email me at mwbogacki, B-O-G-A-C-K-I, @gmail.com. Again, I mainly do this for my clients, but if there are some questions you have about suggestions on how to adapt the exercise, we would be pleased to answer them. Thanks for watching.